it's like a comedy duo. They like talk over each other and with each other, and they're just kind of talking like nonsense.
It's like they're podcasters.
Yeah, it's like they're podcasters.
User wins. Alphanumeric.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Alphanumeric, the weekly podcast where we review every episode of ReBoot ever in order, starting from the beginning. I am one of your hosts, Christopher Siege.
I am one of your other hosts, Cal.
And I am the other host, Aiden.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, not too much. Just pretty excited to sit down and talk about ReBoot.
Yeah, it was quite a wild ride going back to episode 1.
Mm-hmm. Especially after watching some of those later episodes, because I find those are the ones that I go back to more often, just because honestly, the show is a lot darker as it goes on, and the CGI is a lot better. So
yeah, of course. And one of the things that I think would be fun, I'm just going to run this by you on air, is I think spoiling the episode that we are on is fine. But it'd be interesting if we kind of like don't mention anything beyond the episode we're talking about, just in case people, other like my partner is watching it. But if anybody is actually like watching the episodes renewed and they haven't watched them in 25 years, it'd be interesting to bring up the topics as they come up rather than get too focused on what's to come or things that haven't happened yet. Just an idea I thought I'd run by you.
Yeah, like let's pretend it's 1994 again.
Yeah, exactly.
If only we could do that.
So I'm scrounging up $10 to buy a Pokemon card pack.
So I've been a fan of this show since the day it originally aired. Before we get started actually talking about the episode, though, I would like us to each explain, like, how we got into ReBoot, what our relationship is with the show, and Aiden, why don't you go first on that?
Sure, why not? Well, I was just starting the 3rd grade, and I just remember sitting at home, seeing this strange name on the TV listings, and just watching some TV, and being very curious about ReBoot, so I switched to it and automatically taken in. The animation was super weird. I didn't know what to make of it. I just could tell it was all computerized, and it just kind of took me by surprise. So I just kept watching it and was immediately hooked.
It was a mind-blowing experience.
It was truly a mind-blowing experience.
Truly alphanumeric.
Alphanumeric.
What about you, Cal?
I'm the oldest of my slew of siblings and all of my cousins, and we either lived a few doors down or at one point all in the same house. So kind of leaving YTV on all day was a thing. And somebody was just like, "Oh guys, like check out this show." Can't even remember which one of like the 6 or 7. And of course, if you include friends in the mix, sometimes there'd just be 10 kids in the house. And I remember it was a group of like 6 of us like watching it. Wasn't the first episode. I can't even remember which episode it was. And like my cousins loved Frisket, the dog, Enzo's dog on the show. I wasn't old enough to like girls, but I thought like Megabyte was genuinely scary. I say I'm not old enough to like girls because as the show ages up and as I age up, I realized I did. But yeah, it was just like 6 of us like watching this kind of like in silence in between laughing.
I thought we were pretending it was 1994.
Oh, that's right. I should talk with more of my lisp is what you're saying.
Yeah, did you have anything more to say on that? Not the lisp, your relationship to ReBoot.
It was easy to be hooked on it, right? Because until Beast Wars came out, what other like completely 3D animated show with such good voice acting and such good action like was there to grab the like 8 to 12-year-old audience. Like,
Oh, for sure.
I can't really think of anything other than cartoons, but nothing like 3D animated, right?
Well, and indeed, ReBoot was actually the first computer-generated series to air on television. It was not the first fully computer-generated cartoon, however. That is often erroneously, through some research I was doing for the show, is often erroneously attributed to VeggieTales, which premiered in December on home video in December of 1993. Now that didn't sound right to
Huh.
me. That didn't sound right to me because I remember something coming out before that.
I remember Money for Nothing.
Well, yes, and Money
That
for
was
Nothing was indeed it was a music video for a Dire Straits song
Yeah.
from 1986,
86, 85.
somewhere around there.
Yeah.
It was actually animated by the guys who would ultimately go on to found BLT Productions, which eventually became renamed Mainframe Entertainment,
Yeah.
which was the studio that created this: Beast Wars, Beast Machines, Shadow Raiders. But what the first fully computer animated special was back in May 1993. There was a pilot for a series, and I remember watching this. There was a pilot for a series based on a toy line called The Incredible Crash Dummies.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
remember that show.
yeah. A pilot for it was made. It wasn't picked up, but Fox Kids did air the pilot as a special, I believe, on May 1st, 1993. And I remember watching it. And that was the first fully CGI thing I had ever seen. And indeed, it was actually the first fully 100% computer generated half-hour cartoon.
Jeez.
But ReBoot still holds the distinction of being the first fully CGI series.
Cool. For a second, I thought you were talking about one of those like PSAs, the one who's like, "Hi, I'm blah blah the robot. I can put my arm back on. You can't." Do you remember that? Like, play safe.
I do, yeah.
Don't you put it in your mouth and all that noise? Yeah.
Yeah, they actually used crash test dummies for those.
Yeah.
But no, there was a
I
toy
thought you were
line.
talking about that.
There was a toy line in the early 90s called the Incredible Crash Dummies, and their gimmick was they had a button. They were crash test dummies, and they had a button on them, and whenever you press the button, all their limbs would blow off.
Fly apart. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I used to have a couple.
I remember that.
Yeah, and there was a vehicle that was like a crash test taxi cab, and you could wind that up, and it would launch at a wall and then break apart, and the dummies would.
Yeah.
Amusingly destructive toy line.
I loved those. I had a couple of them. They were great.
Yeah, I had a couple of them
lost
too.
all the limbs, so yeah.
There was even a crash test crash test dummies. No, has nothing to do with the band. The crash.
Yeah,
test
I was gonna say I keep hearing Superman.
No, they yeah, there was even a video game based on that for the Super Nintendo, and yeah. Anyway,
Oh, I didn't know about that. Cool.
This isn't a podcast about that. This is a podcast about ReBoot. Just thought that was some interesting background info.
Yeah, absolutely.
My relationship with ReBoot was, and this is, I'm really going to date myself here. I remember reading when I was 9 years old, probably would have been in August 1994. I remember reading the fall preview edition of TV Guide magazine, and there was a little blurb about ReBoot, and it had a picture of Bob in like race car getup, and
I remember that.
And I was like, oh wow, this is like computer animation. This is cool. I'm gonna check this out. So I looked at when it was airing, and it was September 7th, 1994. So I marked my calendar and tuned into YTV that day, and fell in love with the show.
Interesting.
Sweet.
So you actually just randomly happened to spot it in the TV guide. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
like it.
So long-standing history with this show. So this week, as this is the first episode of Alphanumeric, we are going to be reviewing the first episode of ReBoot that, as I mentioned, originally aired on September 7th, 1994. The episode is called The Tearing.
The Tearing.
Cal, why don't you get us started recapping the episode?
Oh boy. So it starts very busy right away.
Yeah.
Right away, our protagonist, Bob, is getting chased by a couple goons on like hover tanks.
Viral binomes. Yeah.
And one of them is red and one of them is blue. And they have like a back and forth between each other, kind of like, I can't quite pinpoint it. They're like chasing him. Again, they're holding on to some sort of really cool looking like hover tank. And he's on a hoverboard, Bob. And they're talking back and forth and they're like, he's confined, he's trapped. Yeah, we're going to get him. And it shows us what Mainframe is, and it's this big 3D kind of like cityscape that seems to be floating, that seems to be on an island with like all this energy just going out into infinity. So right away, like if this is the first episode you ever watch, you're like, whoa, what is this? This is really cool.
I find Mainframe kind of looks like a CMOS battery on a motherboard.
Oh, is that on purpose?
Probably, yeah, I would assume.
Huh. Yeah, it must be. It must be. And they're like, he's trapped, yeah. And Bob kind of turns to the camera all cool like, and he says, I don't think so. And he does the most subtle dodge in anything you'll ever see. He just kind of like moves towards the camera a few feet. And these two goons.
He says slow clock speed or what?
Yeah, slow clock speed or what?
Oh.
And like a Disney cartoon, of course, they're flying right at him, but at each other, hoping to, I guess, pincer him. And he just like lazily like moves out of the way after saying, I don't think so. And of course, they completely smash into each other. The hover tanks blow up, and they're called Hack and Slash. These two blue kind of like goons. They're just in pieces.
Just limbs falling everywhere.
Yeah. And actually, the tanks don't explode. I think they just hit each other.
I think you're right. I think they hit a wall.
The tanks keep going, and they smack into each other because they're hanging off the tanks.
Question for you, Aiden. Hack and Slash, which one is which? Because I've never known.
I believe the blue one is Hack and the red one is Slash.
Okay.
Also, does it matter?
Apparently it does. They get really upset at Bob at one point, but that's in another episode.
Not a 1994 episode.
In a 1994 episode.
Yeah, they smack into each other and they're like arguing with each other, which means they can fall completely into pieces and like still be fine.
They're like the Laurel and Hardy type, but there is no straight. There is no straight man. They're both equally stupid.
They're both
always bickering, and yeah, it's just great.
It's your fault. I hate it. I hate you. Oh, I can't feel my arm. Yeah. There's no straight man. Yeah, that's a good way.
There's this no straight man. They're both idiots, and they're Megabytes goons. Yeah.
It's like they were both at one point in their previous careers, like they were both part of a comedy duo, and they each had their straight man. And through shenanigans, like they both lost their comedy duo partners and ended up getting stuck with one another.
That makes sense.
Wow, this is way more than I've ever thought about Hack and Slash before.
Right? And it's just a coincidence that they happen to look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Well, one's red and one's blue.
Well, one's red and one's blue, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're long-lost twins.
I hope so. I think we have theorized about Hack and Slash to a degree that no one else in the history of talking about ReBoot has ever done.
Or ever will again.
or ever will.
I Actually, I remember when I first got into Reboot, my grandmother caught wind, because I was like 8 or 9 at the time. My grandmother caught wind that I like it, and she started recording all the episodes, and eventually she started watching them, and she started comparing them to various acts she grew up with, and she just thought they were hilarious. So yeah, this is very it's very apt, these analogies. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You can use them for such a multitude of different like comedic situations,
Oh yeah.
especially since they can't die.
Yeah, exactly.
So the slapstick humor for potential for them is enormous. Bob sees them on the ground. He's just like hovering on his hoverboard over them, and he says, "Sorry, guys, end program."
Oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
I
Better
love
luck next cycle.
all the computer puns. Just amazing.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Question:
Hmm.
Did any of you naturally, without having to look online, figure out how much like a nanocycle or a cycle or a megacycle was? Or did you not care as a kid?
I didn't care as a kid. I just knew that they were ridiculously shorter than a second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Christopher, did you ever
'cause
piece that together?
That actually kind of makes sense, given that they are just little bits of program and code living inside a computer. It
Yeah.
makes sense that time would move at a very different pace than the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like what happens in a couple seconds in a computer for us. Yeah. It's an entire episode for them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, and it makes sense too, because like think about how much more quickly, even back then, a computer could process information than a human being.
Hey.
Yeah.
This is not the supercomputer. So, Christopher, what did you think of the villain being introduced in a 3D window that pops up in front of Bob?
Oh.
Yes.
Like, do you feel like that kind of is a weak introduction for a villain?
Yes.
Or do you think that's okay because it's building up to how dangerous he is?
It's essentially the equivalent of introducing a major character by them phoning someone, which, as someone who studied screenwriting and storytelling in university, that is a terrible way to introduce a character.
Which is why I specifically asked you about that. So,
also, you typically want to introduce a character on what's called a isolation shot.
Yeah, which is why this actually surprised me. For the listeners, I almost said Megatron. Megabyte is this big,
different podcast.
bulky, this big, bulky, like strong, naked blue sprite with a xenomorphic, like elongated the back of his head, a really huge, strong jaw, and
I
like
never even thought about that. Yeah.
yeah, and a bolted on like interesting hair. Like red hairstyle that like follows his like elongated head. And he pops up in the window. This is the first time. This is again, we're in the first like 15 seconds here, people. And he pops up and I can't do an impression. I'm just saying, but he says, yeah, Bob.
Very few people can pull off Tony J.
Tony J is
Tony J can pull off Tony J, and I think there's been one other person who's come close.
Okay, so quick sidebar. That god awful show, ReBoot: The Guardian Code, that came out a couple of years ago.
I pretend that doesn't exist.
Let's pretend it doesn't exist.
I know what you're going to say.
I'm ashamed that it was shot in Victoria.
I unfortunately own the entire series on Google Play Video because it was on sale for like $2.99 for all 20 episodes. So I'm sure, why not?
There's 20 episodes? Jeez.
Yeah, there was, yeah. But spoilers for that show that no one gives two shits about, I guess.
Not great.
But Megabyte, I almost said Megatron there as well. Megabyte shows up in that. And unfortunately, Tony J is no longer with us. He died quite some time ago, back in 2007, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy that they got to voice Megabyte in ReBoot: The Guardian Code, is the best sound-alike of Tony J I've ever heard.
Really?
Yeah,
That's why earlier when I said other than Tony himself, there's one other person who can do a pretty good impression.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's pretty damn good, I gotta say. That is the only praise I will levy against that
It's
dumpster
a
fire
good,
of a show.
and the inflection and how he sounds is
Mhm.
very accurate to him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That's important.
So Megabyte is on a vid
it says
window.
vid window. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a 3D like little window hovering right in front of Bob, catching him unawares, and he says, "Bob, all I ask is a simple favor, and you put us through all this. Why?"
I do like the visual here of the camera panning around Bob and the vid window. And when it pans around, we see the other side of the vid window, and it's just the same shot of Megabyte
Yeah.
on the side of the vid window that's facing Bob.
Oh,
It's a cool
I think
visual.
that happens in the diner, or does it happen in this scene too?
I think it happens in the
I
scene.
think it happens a few times, but
Because this is a vid window, but later there's a double-sided vid window that we see that happen in.
Perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself.
Which is understandable, but this is a normal vid window. And so Megabyte complains and he
This
says,
is vid window level 1, yeah.
level 1, yeah. This is less energy to produce than the double-sided vid window. And he's like, "Why are you putting us through all this, Bob?" And Bob says, "Because I never do favors for slime."
just a theory.
Yeah, just a theory. And he kind of has this impression because, by the way, the chair in the vid window behind him is much like his hair. It's this
Yeah.
like spiky, flared like throne that he sits in. And
Mhm.
he makes a mob boss comment like, "Oh, you're just making things difficult for your friends."
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bob's like, "What are you talking about, my friends?" And he's just like, "Think about it." And he has this worried face on him. So he's right away, the impression I get is, oh, he's kind of like this comfortable, like wealthy mob boss with like a weird haircut.
That is kind. I never actually thought about it that way, but yeah, that is kind of the vibe that Megabyte is giving off here.
Yeah, at least in this episode.
Mhm.
And then later on, we find out that in this episode, we find out like he's very physically terrifying.
Mm.
Like he's not a normal sprite.
He's always a virus.
Exactly.
Yeah. And very animalistic. The way he can like just kind of
I like
bound
that
up
he
an
just
elevator shaft.
Yeah, I like that he's just naked and he owns it. He puts his hands on his hips like all the other a lot of other sprites, like they have clothes modeled on them. And speaking of clothes, we have it cuts to after it shows Bob being worried, it cuts to this like high-rise 3D apartment with like tubes that remind me of Futurama.
And a giant fucking 8-ball on the top.
And
Yeah.
thank you.
Because reasons?
So Aiden, why is there an 8-ball on the top of Bob's apartment?
I have no idea.
Christopher?
I've always loved it, but I have no idea.
And it spins too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Jeez.
it definitely does. Yeah.
Christopher, give me your theory. Or should we just go, you know what? We don't know. Let's move on. Is it because it's cool?
I'm going to guess that might be some kind of revolving restaurant.
Ooh, that's cool.
And
like
the
diner.
yeah, and like the actual number 8 is like a giant window for guests to look out
that
and
would be
gaze
sweet.
upon Mainframe.
That's canon. Yeah, and it doesn't look like this is like a cheap. I don't know. I don't know Mainframe. I don't even know if they use money. But we zoom in through his window, and Bob's asleep in an energy pool.
Mhm.
Oh, I just thought those were his covers.
Oh, are they just like cool looking blankets?
Yeah, I guess. Unless because it looks like energy.
Yeah, it's kind of like pulsating, like blue energy.
Maybe
Yeah, and
he's
it's
just
kind of
recharging. I don't know.
It's kind of engulfing all of him, with the exception of his head, but it's like it is kind of chilling out like almost like a liquid.
Yeah.
Even behind his head. But
So maybe it's like it heals them. Maybe it's like a stasis thing and it helps them sleep. It's cool looking. That's all I know.
yeah, and energy replenishment, kind of like in Star Trek, like the regeneration pods that the Borg stand in.
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
stand there, close their eyes, and they get healed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a vid window pops up, and I
With
find
an
this
alarm
funny.
clock on it.
It's like an yeah, it's just an analog alarm clock, like ringing loudly.
Yeah, and it wakes Bob up, and
He looks
like
pissed.
he doesn't even get a chance to press fucking snooze because
He gets
like
hoisted out of his bed.
yeah.
Yeah,
I actually wish this was kind of a thing, honestly, because it would
I
really help.
I would break my ankle a week into owning a bed like this. So, Christopher, can you explain the mechanism that we're looking at? It only shows it for a while, but it's actually lifts out of the bed,
Yeah.
and it's person shaped. Like it's not a square out of the bed. It actually has like a little area where his head is. So as
Oh,
long as
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't move, it just has enough room for you. And he actually has a poster above his bed that's another vid window. I don't know if you guys caught this.
I don't think I caught it.
I didn't
It
see that
says
either.
it says home sweet home. And again, it's got like the little scroll, so it means maybe you can look left and right and up and down, kind of like when you have a window open, but the image is too big, so you can scroll left and right and up and down. But what it is it's a picture of the net with all of the individual like not mainframes, but all of the individual little
Systems.
Thank you. And there's a red molten orb and a blue smaller molten orb in the sky. And we know he's from the net. And he's the new sprite in town.
Yeah, he says it right in the intro.
Yeah.
I
I
come,
from the net. I didn't notice that there was a sun and a moon in the net.
Oh.
I didn't.
It's in this
either.
little home sweet home thing. When I was rewatching it earlier, not Monday. I had watched it a few days ago, but like earlier, I paused it here and I'm like, oh, that's cool. There's a sun and moon in like the dark purple sky.
Huh. No, I've never
cool.
even noticed that. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it's at approximately like 2.5 minutes in.
Oh, okay.
So do you guys think he's like a downloaded like antivirus program?
That's kind of always what I thought of Guardians were. Yeah, it's basically antivirus programs.
And you
actually
they download them, which is why they're from the net.
As far as I know, there was a Microsoft Bob, and I think it had something to do with antivirus. Now that I'm thinking about it, let me just look this up real quick here.
Oh well, while you're looking that up, you've always thought that, Christopher?
Yeah, that's kind of always been my takeaway from it. What you said about him being downloaded from the net, like that's not even something I had considered. So that kind of adds another layer to it right there.
Yeah, he's an antiviral program, but instead of like going to a brick and mortar, the owner of this computer like must have downloaded it, because they do get help from the net sometimes, but it's always like kind of rare. So it's kind of like whoever owns this computer has AOL and they use it sparingly.
So you're saying Bob is trialware?
Yeah. Oh God. Which means
can,
he's going to be useless in 6 months or so.
You can download the software, but eventually you're going to have to go to Radio Shack and buy the 3.5-inch floppy disk.
Oh
yeah.
Okay. So Microsoft Bob is not antiviral. It was released in 1995 on March 11th and was discontinued in early 96 because it wasn't very user-friendly.
Successful product by the sounds of it.
Yeah. But, yeah, okay. So I heard about that. But it's not what I thought it was. Never mind.
And it also came out after ReBoot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting.
Maybe this is what it was named after.
Possibly before its launch.
Like
in
an homage?
95. Maybe.
So his bed
We
flips him out into another room.
We find out in development it was codenamed Bill.
Code, and then they released it as William, but that didn't have the same ring to it.
As
Actually-
Bob.
Actually, its code name was Utopia, but yeah.
No.
I'm just reading. Yeah.
So he's fully clothed. His bed platform flips him into this little like side room with a mirror.
Onto a circular conveyor belt type thing.
Oh yeah, that's going all the way around his like condo.
It's like a car wash, yeah.
Yeah, so he just needs to stand. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. It is like a car wash.
Yeah,
it is like a cylinder of water like comes from the ceiling, hits him, and disappears into the floor.
Yeah.
He's wearing his clothes. So I know I said Megabyte was naked and everyone else is clothes, but maybe there's no such thing as wait, no, they do change clothes later.
I never thought of Megabyte
they don't have
as...
sweat glands, so
yeah.
I think realistically, like it probably would have just cost too much money to reskin the Bob model.
Honestly,
at this time.
yeah. It's much easier to keep cartoons and animated models just the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Unless you're hack and slash, then you show off by smashing them into 100 pieces.
Of course.
So he continues on the conveyor belt, and like a salon perm like machine comes down over his head. It completely envelops his head for a second and then lifts back up. And instead of having silver hair, he has gold hair.
Gold pigtails.
Yeah, he has like Goldilocks. Yeah. It's funny, but I don't know why.
Yeah,
I think it's just cheesy humor.
It's something that would... Yeah, it's something to make like 9-year-olds laugh.
It made me laugh just for the absurdity of it. And there's a mirror to his left, and he very briefly catches a glimpse of himself and actually looks like very surprised. So clearly that's not his morning routine. The AI for the Alexa screwed up his hairdo. And I wonder how much privacy people have in Mainframe, because a vid window pops up right in his face with Enzo, who we don't know yet, but he's a child of about 10, and he has green colored skin, and he has like little shoulder pad things, and he yells, "Bob, we need you at Dots, it's terrible." I can't do a 10-year-old voice. This is really weird, and I wanted to ask Christopher if he thought this was cool. The camera zooms in to the vid window, and then instead of just zooming in on the vid window, we actually, on Dot's Diner, we actually like relocate with this zoom in. And I actually thought that was kind of a cool scene transition. We like zoom in on the vid window and we're at a different space.
Oh yeah, that is. I'm looking at it now. That's a really cool scene transition.
Yeah, I like that. It's a lot more natural feeling, and it's like kind of cool. Kind of shows off. Keeps the flow. Dot's Diner, even though this is the first time we're seeing it, I actually thought it was like stylized. I didn't realize it was all broken and messed up. And the tea was supposed to be there, and the diner was supposed to be all jangled and stuff. And Bob comments and says,
all
"That's
the
a new
debris
one."
all over the place.
Yeah, that's when I realized, oh, okay. But I kind of like the tea like hanging down, the diner all messed up, but the broken windows and the tables thrown out them kind of also confirmed my suspicion that Megabyte is this like mob boss.
A mob boss, Nazi.
There's a dog blocking the way to the diner.
Yeah, comically with a comically misproportioned head.
His head is half of his body.
Yeah.
Huge.
It's huge, and he's got like a studded collar.
Because this is the 90s.
Hell yeah. He goes to step over this dog, and he growls, and you actually see a little like a little reboot symbol, the little badge he has on his chest, on his boot, like a boot buckle.
Oh, Bob.
On Bob, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also on It's also found on each of the foot panels of the zip boards. The thing that Bob was flying around, the
Oh, are those
hoverboard
called
thing.
zip boards?
Yeah, the zip
they're
boards,
called
yeah.
zip boards. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And they're on
Cool.
each of those?
The cooler hoverboard, yeah.
Yeah, the hoverboard that works.
Yeah.
So this dog growls even though he's asleep. And Bob looks at the camera. Boy, does he look at the camera a lot. And he says, right. What do you think of, is his name Cecil?
Well, he
like,
says
old
Cecil.
I think it's Cecil, right?
Yeah, it's Cecil. Well, that's what he says, and everybody else calls him Cecil.
Yeah, Bob always calls him Cecil. Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but it's becomes a bit of a recurring joke that Bob always calls him Cecil, and Cecil
Sort of-
is like it's pronounced Cecil.
Cecil.
Cecil. Interesting. So
Bob climbs through the window.
We cut inside of the diner, and Cecil is like an old 80s Apple monitor.
Yeah.
And
Kinda,
he's
yeah.
connected to the ceiling. So the only mobility he has in the entire world of Mainframe, the entire city of Mainframe, is this on rails oval circuit around the diner. And I'm
Mhm.
like, when I was like I said, I
What a
rewatched
living.
this. I haven't seen it in 20 years. I'm like, that's his life. he lives in the diner.
And people can't even be bothered to pronounce his name properly. No wonder he gets so uppity about it.
Right. And he's a man of culture. So for the listeners, he has a French accent. And in the DVD copy that I'm having, it tells you in accents, French accent. This situation, she is ridiculous.
Oh, are you actually watching it on DVD?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I have a DVD, a way to access the DVD copy. Yes.
I'm watching it on Tubi. How are you watching it, Aiden?
I'll be really honest with you guys. Downloaded it years ago.
Oh,
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
there you
So, Christopher, I said he's connected to the ceiling and that he's an old Apple monitor from the 80s, but he also has a French mustache. He's got the kind of greased back hair that's kind of fallen in front of him, a bow tie, and then just these robot appendages with cuffs.
go. Mm-hmm.
He's unique looking already,
Mm-hmm.
apart from all the other sprites. So yeah, sorry, Christopher, you were saying Bob climbs through a door. Or sorry,
No,
he climbs through a
the
broken window.
And then after he climbs into the diner, we are introduced to another new character. This is a fully grown woman, also with green skin, much like Enzo.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
his sister.
And she says to Bob, "Ever heard of a door?" And then
Oh, that's right.
behind Bob,
The zip board.
the zip board comes flying through the window and lands on the floor, just mangled and destroyed. And Bob looks to Dot, the woman that I mentioned. Bob looks to Dot and says, "Ever heard of a frisket?" Which actually was a line that actually made me laugh when I was watching this the other day.
Yeah, I liked that. It's interesting. Aiden had said this earlier. It is humorous even to watch as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like it's aged so bad, and I think it's aged really well actually. I'm still amazed at how good it looks.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Considering thinking back to remember what computers were like back in 1994?
Yeah.
Someone making this now with a balls to the wall gaming PC. It's yeah, okay. But making a show that still visually is watchable as this show is on 1994 or 93, presumably, early 90s, just purely DOS based computers. It's kind of incredible.
Well, from what I understand, they actually started working on ReBoot in I think '89,
And they released a. Well, they didn't release a pilot. It was in 91 or 92, and the producer was like, "Looks a little frigid. Can you make them more lifelike?" And everybody was like, "Oh." And eventually they perfected it and released the first one in 94.
I think I saw some early test footage of I think it was supposed to be like Bob and Dot, and they basically just looked like a bunch of blocks walking around.
Yeah. There was one, I think, where it showed like Bob was originally this head on like a stick body. It was like a green head on a stick body, but he had like a backwards hat. It was what's now Enzo basically, and he was actually zipping around a circuit board on a surfboard. This is like before Mainframe and all that, and started talking. Yeah, it was basically the whole pitch that they were going to pitch to it was the idea that they were going to pitch to the network. And then of course everything got revamped and they created ReBoot.
Thank God.
Megabyte was originally called Bad Data, and it was you're
gonna say Bad Dad.
Bad Dad is the enemy. Bad Data, and it was all very, very like blocky, and it was surprisingly good actually. But yeah, thank God they changed it, because I would not have watched it if it were still like that.
I actually kind of appreciate the meta nature of a name like Bad Data.
Yeah.
It makes more sense than Megabyte. Just saying.
It does. Yes,
it's true.
It doesn't sound as cool, but it does make more sense.
Yeah.
Yes, let us jump to Enzo. I'm not gonna. What he says here doesn't matter because he's a hyperactive 10-year-old.
Yeah,
but I find his design really interesting.
So Bob is after he's all like, "Ever heard of a frisket?" We hear a child's voice yell out, "Bob!" And Bob looks to the side, and the camera goes to a point of view shot of someone running toward Bob and colliding right into them.
Oh, and that's right. Yeah, it does show us from Enzo's perspective.
Yeah. Which is his standard way of approaching. Yeah,
he tackles Bob.
Anybody. Yeah.
So he tackles
Bob.
Actually,
he gets a front mount on him, and if you're into MMA, like that's surprising. Like he's got him completely defenseless, basically. And I'm like, wow, good going, kid. He yells a bunch of stuff by, "Oh, Megabyte's goons came by and they messed it up and they showed up at the diner," and it was like, what did they say? They started to completely offline the place.
Oh yeah, that was it.
I enjoy the weird jargon. And the camera slowly zooms in as he's like sputtering off things. He's got purple irises. He's got like purple eyes.
He is one hyperactive child.
He goes nuts and he's like, "Crunch, backlash, delete, trash, log off, jack out," and he just starts saying a bunch of random computer terms, like somebody pretending they're a hacker from the 90s. And he's kind of like kicking and like dancing and doing some sort of TikTok thing. And Dot yells at him and she's like, "I think Bob gets the picture." And then it zooms down and it shows he's been doing these like kicks and like karate like slices and jumping up and down like on Bob's chest.
One thing I want to point out that we didn't mention about when you were talking about Cecil's look is his icon. So everyone, like we talked about the ReBoot icon already. Everyone in the show, they all have them. Cecil's is rainbow colored.
Oh,
that is true. That is true.
So here's this dapper Frenchman with a bow tie and a mustache, and his icon is rainbow colored. And this was 1994. So I'm not
possibly homosexual. There you go.
There could be some gay coding there. I'm gonna say.
Let's not put him into a box, even though
he's a box.
He is one.
Even though he's literally a box.
Yeah, that's cool. His name tag says Cecil, and yeah, his little like triangular like reboot icon has a little. It's actually really cool design, and it's rainbow. Good catch.
Yeah, that's funny.
actually cool.
I saw that and like it just never even occurred to me. Huh, cool.
Yeah. Anyway, just thought
Yeah.
that was worth bringing up.
Yeah. So Dot's like picking up a table, and she's like, "What I want to know is who did this." And right away, like I even remember thinking of this as a kid, and I'm like, "How many like mob bosses are in this town?" And Bob says it's got to be Megabyte. And to push the plot along a little bit, everyone in the diner is like, "Hey, if it's you got a problem with like Megabyte, like tell us what the problem is. We want to help." And he says, "No, I'm the guardian. I'll take care of it." And they insist.
In the diner when everyone is all like, yeah, we'll help.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. Enzo has like the most hilariously smug, self-satisfied look on his face.
He does.
That's right.
And and he
I think
cuts
there's actually
to-
a GIF of that out there.
There is, yeah. He's like wagging his head all smug like, and it cuts to the other people, presumably not necessarily staff, but other sprites that are kind of like volunteering to clean up Dot's diner. Very community minded.
I always assumed that they were
yeah.
they were just patrons who were there, like they were regulars there who were helping out because they like Dot and they like the diner.
Because as they say in Mainframe, we stick together.
In Mainframe, we stick together.
Yep.
These sprites are very different than Enzo and Megabyte and like Dot and Bob. These sprites are orbs and like cubes, like stacked cubes.
3-piece rectangles.
Three like square pieces stacked up to make a rectangle, or just like a little like orb with like a little rotatey center thing so they can look up and down.
A Tetris piece.
The line blocks are four.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh.
All of the Tetris pieces are four little blocks. 4 little squares, I mean.
I'm one of those rare Philistines that doesn't like Tetris. I always found Tetris really boring.
All of the Tetris pieces are made out of 4 squares. But anyways, yeah, they're little orbs and they're little stacks of cubes. And they're like, yeah, tell us, yeah, we'll help. And they're all like gung-ho and community-based. One of them's got like a little tool belt and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and as Aiden pointed out already, they're called binomes.
Yeah.
Oh, those are called binomes?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Bob, Enzo, and Dot are sprites, and Old Man Pearson and all them are binomes.
So why, or maybe one of you can tell me, what's the difference between, other than appearance, is there a difference between binomes and sprites? Or is it just appearance?
I think it's just appearance. I honestly don't know. I think
I'm gonna look up what a binome actually is.
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
So do you know the term for like sprites in gaming?
I do not know.
Christopher's looking up binome.
Binomial net. Oh, weird. It's
But like there's a few things that sprite means. When I was a kid, I only knew one of them. I knew that like a sprite was like a term for like a fae. Do you know what I mean? Like an elf or like a fairy or something.
I always knew sprites as being characters in 2D animation, like
and that's the
2D
exactly
video games. Yeah,
and that's the other one. When I got older, I'm like, oh, a sprite is like a graphic that can be moved on the screen.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Consists of an entity. It's an entity that's supposed to represent something. So yeah, it's interesting. But I don't know what binome means.
Okay, so binome is probably comes from binomial, which is from algebra,
Mm-hmm.
which refers to consisting of two terms or parts.
Yeah, it's the expression or the sum of like two parts or two terms, right?
Yeah, you're probably looking at the exact same page that I am right now.
Oh,
Here
I'm not looking up anything.
Oh, okay.
Here is the reboot definition, which I found on Fandom, the reboot wiki. Binomes are small mechanical people that inhabit most systems.
Oh, well, that doesn't help us.
They
not really.
they are one several types of formats found in cyberspace. Binomes come in two varieties: ones and zeros. Okay.
Ah, that's why
Yeah.
some of them are vertical blocks that resemble a 1, and the others are spheres that resemble a 0.
Completely makes sense.
From binary. Okay.
There you go.
Stacks and cubes have one eye. The zeros are shaped like a ball. You're absolutely right. Holy cow. Yeah, and the ones tend to be the more common than zeros. So, yeah, there are more of the square ones than there are of the not square ones.
Yeah, right when you said ones and zeros, I'm like, oh, okay, binary.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I get it. Oh, we are learning things on the air, listeners.
And Megabyte's viral binomes are blue with green eyes.
But they otherwise look the same.
They just look all the same, just Megabyte colored.
Megabyte is like a dark metallic purple.
Yeah.
By the way, like sky blue.
I thought it was like cobalt blue or something like that.
Or sorry, not sky blue, but like cobalt blue, I guess is a better.
Megabyte's viral infected binomes are also called the ABCs.
Are they?
Yes.
Which I find kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because it's a subtle jab. So this show was originally a co-production between YTV and the U.S. broadcast network ABC. But Mainframe Entertainment ran into a lot of censorship issues and like notes from the network from ABC specifically. So much so that they, after I believe it was after the first season, ABC actually canceled the show, and the show just lived on YTV, and eventually it got broadcast in the States on other channels. But particularly from, I know I'm jumping ahead here, but particularly from like season 2 onwards, there are a lot of jabs at ABC.
I love that. I love that like petty like competitiveness.
Anyway.
Yeah, so to progress here, it goes on, and they convince Bob not to do this favor for Megabyte. Megabyte hasn't said what it is. It's just they're all like, no, don't converse with the mob boss, please. And he's like, okay, I won't. And Cecil comes up behind him on his like whirly platform, and now I'm seeing up close his little reboot symbol is like rainbow and actually like really cool design, and Bob's is gold and black.
The Guardian.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think Enzo's he wears a backwards cap, by the way, everyone, and his is on the back
because it was the 90s.
of his. It was the 90s. A backwards cap was cool.
He's a cool skater dude, you know.
He is.
Yeah.
And his little symbol is on his forehead, so the back of his hat. And I think Dots is on her chest, like above her heart as well.
Yeah, generally I believe they're just known as icons.
Are they just called icons?
Yeah. I believe generally most sprites and binomes icons are on their chest.
Yeah, Dots is actually right in the center, almost like a necklace, but there's nothing going around her neck, like at the top, on the top of her chest, in the middle of her chest. Yeah, or sorry, the top of her chest. And so they all cheer, and they're glad that Bob isn't caving and like cooperating with the mob boss. And he starts like shit talking Megabyte. And he's like, we'll show him. We'll edit / cancel his command. I'm not afraid of. Oh, geez.
Old Mega Breath.
Old Mega Breath. And meanwhile, of course, as he's talking shit about Megabyte. A double-sided, it actually says at the top of the vid window, it says double-sided vid window.
Oh,
Yeah.
Pops up behind him. Yeah. Pops up behind him, and he just kind of stops. Kind of like, when somebody's like behind you, and he slowly turns around. And he makes this like scared face, and he goes, "Bail!" And he just runs, even though it's just a vid window.
I like how the vid window at the bottom, and the side actually has straight up has a scroll bars.
Yeah, it's got the
Yeah.
little scroll bars. And this is when the camera pans around, because he's like, "Oh my, looks like you had an accident." Like being all coy. And as the camera pans, this is the scene Christopher was mentioning earlier. There's like a mirrored image on the other side of the double-sided vid window. And the words double-sided vid window are actually like in reverse as well, which is kind of cool. They're showing off their 3D effects.
Animators are showing off.
And like a mob boss, he's like, "Oh, if there's anything I could do to help you with this accident, please let me know." And I'm like, "Okay, dude." Sure. And I think
so he is in this scene, in this whole exchange here. He straight up is being a mob boss, because this is like racketeering type shit.
Exactly. "Oh, look, it's a shame that your place was messed up. If only you had paid for protection."
Yeah.
And he's like, "If there's anything I can do, please tell me." And Enzo, he's kind of like hiding behind Bob, and he like leans out, and he's like, "You could erase yourself." And Megabyte is like, charming. And he coerces him into doing this like small favor. So if he just works with him, this won't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And
but then,
he's like,
"Oh shit!"
Yes, let's
Warning.
jump right to the "oh shit."
Warning, incoming game. So the
Yeah.
sky in Mainframe goes dark and purple, and we hear an alarm, and a female voice is like, "Warning, incoming game."
What
So if
a
you're
fortunate return of events.
Yeah, so if you're watching this for the first time as a kid, you're just like, "What's going on?" What?
Warning, incoming game. And the sky turns dark, like a dark purple, and lightning is striking. Like, this is some scary shit. Presumably, the binomes are probably scrambling to get out of the way. And as we'll find out, the game that comes from the sky is this big purple, like, I don't know what a rectangle version of a cube is, but this big, like, long cube descends from the sky and just like envelops part of the city.
Quick sidebar: when Nintendo back in the day announced that I think it was codenamed the Nintendo Dolphin was going to be named the Nintendo
Wow.
GameCube.
Yes.
Yeah.
I laughed immediately, especially when they showed it off too, and that it was purple.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
purple. It's a cube. That's the first thing I thought about too.
That's good. I did not think about that, but yeah, it's a purple cube called the GameCube.
Yep. So we cut to again, I almost said Megatron. We cut to Megabyte.
Not through the vid window, but just straight up Megabyte.
Yeah, we cut to Megabyte's lair. And he's in his like chair thing that kind of looks like his weird headpiece type thing.
Yeah.
And he spins around.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is actually the first time we're seeing Megabyte in full for the first time in person and not through a vid window. Dude has no legs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He is attached to his chair by a ball joint.
Yeah, so his lower torso, his upper torso, by the way, is a huge, jacked, like, nude male. Like, he's got huge biceps and shoulders and like huge pecs.
It's interesting.
Abs.
It's interesting you keep saying that, because I never thought of him as naked. I just saw him as like a ripped, like, robot, like android type thing.
Well,
So
I'm sure when I was a kid as well.
I never never thought of him as like a naked guy. So
I kind of always thought of
think-
him as a robot too.
So did I. It's funny.
But yeah, he's got like huge pecs. He's got like a skull tattoo on his chest. And he's got like
A green skull tattoo.
the viral skull, I believe it's called.
And the bottom, like Christopher said, the bottom of his torso is a ball joint.
yeah.
And he's just chilling connected to this hover chair.
And I think there's a scene in the first. Oh, was it the first episode? Where his legs come up out of the ground.
I
then
don't
No,
know.
I think that's
No?
later.
Oh, okay, never mind. We'll stick
Yeah.
to this episode. But yeah.
So Megabyte says, "Oh, how gratifying! I want 3 legions in the sector to watch for Bob." So he has legions, which is we're now finding out. We're like, whoa, 3 legions? What is that? Are those the names of those like giant hover tanks, or like does he have army of people? And yeah, he's nodding to someone off screen, and of course, for some reason, he had to have better lieutenants. There's the completely healed again, completely like put back together, hack and slash.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're these big armored like binomes, but the way they move around is their torso goes into this little rod and a little like ball joint, and they just roll around.
You know what they actually kind of remind me of? Like, just a like kind of passing resemblance. Their basic design is Gizmo Duck from DuckTales.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I thought of too.
Oh, yeah, because Gizmo Duck has that single tire,
Yeah,
but he has this huge upper body with giant like shoulder armor.
yeah, and like their basic shape is essentially a inverted triangle.
Yep. They're good goon shapes. Oh, they have a little antenna. Just a little antenna right in the top of their head.
So does Gizmo Duck.
Which of these shows came out first?
DuckTales, definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah,
does.
yeah, I know. But an antenna
By
is
several
nothing
years.
new. An antenna is nothing new. I just realized that the blue one's mouth flashes red and white, and the red one's mouth flashes blue and white.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Huh.
Cool.
I never even noticed that. Yeah, cool.
Also,
And they're like,
something
yeah, we're gonna get him. Yeah, you tell him, boss. We're gonna get him. Yeah.
something I'd like to point out about the blue one, hack or slash, whichever he is.
We'll never know. Aiden has told us, but we will never
Hack.
remember.
Hack.
That's hack. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's hack.
So he is voiced by Gary Chalk, who a couple of years after this would go on to be the voice of Optimus Primal in Beast Wars.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Which, if you want to hear talk
Oh.
about Beast Wars, check out me and Cal's other podcast, Too Much Energon.
Yeah, we're gonna plug our other podcast. So if you like Beast Wars, go check that one out. I did not know. That does not sound like Optimus.
It's him.
Wow, that's cool.
Sorry.
Voice actors. It's like they have different voices or something.
Okay, so sorry, I just got to put this one to sleep. The blue one is slash.
Oh, the blue one slash. Okay.
Yeah, the blue one is slash. The red one is hack. Yeah.
All right.
I'm on Reboot Wiki.
You know what's
Hack and
dumb
slash.
is I actually have the Reboot Wikipedia page open, and I just realized I could have just looked at it.
Who knows what their names are? I'm just saying we'll never ever know. They're hack and slash. So we follow Bob, who has a new zip board, by the way. Oh, I guess these things are just lying around Mainframe.
Yeah, apparently.
And it's kind of like a cool cyberpunk shot because the sky's night and there are all these like electric, like almost rails going across the sky. And they have little yellow 0 and 1s zipping down them.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And he's running off towards this giant cube. So if this is your first time watching, you're like, oh, it's okay. The cube is a game. It's scary. And he's racing off to go get it. And those hover tanks like show up. And interesting, are the tanks themselves, they're the legions, or is like a legion a group of tanks? I don't know.
What is a legion in military terms?
I always just assumed it was like a multiple number of units, and a unit is about like
That's
10 to 20 soldiers.
what I thought too.
Christopher is going to.
He's getting to the bottom of this.
He's getting to the bottom of this. So Aiden,
Yeah.
it zooms in, and these hover tanks, kind of like surround him. This is when we get a good look at them, and they're obviously very heavily armed.
Oh
like
yeah.
there are cannons sticking out of them, missiles. They have like spotlights on them. Like these are dangerous looking devices.
Yeah.
So why do you think he's not? Or actually, well, you know the answer because he needs Bob. But like, he could take over. He could like invade like Mainframe. Why do you think he's kind of like in a mob boss position?
Why
'Cause
is
he didn't
Megabyte?
hurt anybody. Yeah, Megabyte. Like what? He never hurt anyone at the diner. He's got these hover tanks. Like he could be a little bit more forceful. Do you just think it's because it's a kids show, or do
I
you think
he's
he
just
needs the city?
I don't think he really needs the city. I think he wants to set up shop in the city. I think he's just your genuine bad guy for no real
Yeah.
reason. Just bent on system domination, if you will.
Okay,
'Cause
so sorry.
Viruses. Sorry, go on.
A legion is a group of soldiers comprised of or from a specific ethnic, national, religious, or ideological background.
Oh.
Okay, so a legion is just a large group of soldiers from a similar background
Yeah, basically. All
with the same
all,
motivation.
all representing the same thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's a good
So an
definition.
army. So an army.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So these hover tanks, they like super block Bob from getting in. I was saying to Aiden while Christopher was looking that up that they look like they're heavily armed, like they have missiles and like a kind of like gun on the front. And instead of just shooting Bob, they just kind of box him in and surround him in the air.
Who's funding this?
That's what I was thinking. I was like,
You know?
wow, how much bank does Megabyte have?
Like how many shares in Mainframe does he own? Like
He's technically the shareholder. He's the CEO.
yeah.
So at this point, do we we know that Megabyte is trying to prevent Bob from getting into the game, but do we know
Yes.
why yet?
No, we don't. Just that all of his legions, like his hover tanks and hack and slash, are stopping him from going into the game.
Yeah, but we don't know the why.
We don't know why yet.
We don't know why yet. No, yeah.
No. In the background, there's ads for, it looks like company. They're on like a building. Yeah. It says Baudway. Baudway.
Yeah.
What is that?
Baudway, it's actually a take on a gentleman's club, I believe, in somewhere in Vancouver. I don't know. It's someplace. I remember looking this up a while ago, but it's actually there is. Give me a second here. I got
Christopher, did you know what Baudway was?
No, I didn't even notice that, honestly.
Yeah, it just seemed like kind of like a mall district or like a large kind of like shopping mall area, except that they're on multiple buildings.
Broadway. Yeah. I think it's also a play on Broadway.
Yeah, that's
what
guess.
I thought. Yeah.
But there was also some reference to come on. There's nothing. Why can't I find it? I looked this up too. It was a couple of years ago, and it was something to do with some play on Broadway or some club.
It's food for thought.
But it was an ad, yeah.
Yeah, it's food for thought. Bob is kind of like splayed out in like a cartoonic fashion over one of these hover tanks, and he falls, but like he's not moving. Yeah. And so kid me sees him falling into the darkness, and I'm like, is he gonna die?
So moving forward a little bit, the GameCube touches down. The Megabyte's forces, his legions, were successful in blocking Bob from getting in the game.
Yeah.
At this point, we go to commercial, and then we come back. Do you guys remember the commercial transitions? Whenever the show would go to commercial, it would go to like a blue screen with the ReBoot logo, and it would play the music, and it would be like, "ReBoot will be back after these messages."
Yeah, and it would play it on the return as well.
It would, yeah. Beast Wars did the
now
same
return.
thing too.
We now
I always
return
found that
to
weird.
ReBoot.
Even as a child, I always found it weird that it was telling us that it's going to commercial and that it would come back. I wonder if there's a tested marketing that kids will stay and wait until the commercials are done more if they put those in than if they didn't.
I think it's also probably to hammer in the point of like what show you're watching to a child.
Right? By repeating the name and the music over and over as they watch it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So we come back from commercial and Bob is all like, "Oh no, no." And he's looking at this little thing.
Oh, he's looking at this thing on his wrist.
His glitch.
Yeah, he's looking at Glitch, his Guardian Key tool.
What a wacky thing he's looking at.
And all it's really it has this little
Everyone
screen
has
on it.
one now.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Looking at all the game stats.
But all it's showing on the screen is just a purple GameCube floating around.
Yeah.
With this
like-
gadget taking random like readings from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we hear and Bob doesn't look happy, and then we hear a female voice be all like, "Game over, the user wins." And then the cube lifts up and goes back into the sky.
Yeah, so this is an interesting topic for discussion. I don't want to linger on it like too long, but
boy.
the DVD subtitles I have, and me growing up, I always thought the voice just said "Game over, user wins." But Christopher hears the female voice, the mainframe voice, say "the user wins."
In the first
Aiden-
episode, it says that. Yeah.
Aiden, why do you think there's this like contention between the voice saying "user wins" and "the user wins"?
The contention?
Yeah, I looked online, and apparently
I didn't
a
know about
ton of
this
people-
until Cal brought it up.
Yeah, a ton
I-
of people think she's just has an accent, or she's overemphasizing the word "user" because she's saying "user wins," but
I-
Christopher hears "the user wins." So, what do you think?
In the first episode, I definitely heard the. But in all the other episodes with the GameCubes, I only heard user.
I checked a couple of other episodes watching it, not on Tubi, because for whatever reason, Tubi doesn't have subtitles. But
They're automated, yeah.
But I checked on Crave, subtitles through Crave, and
Mm.
Crave always adds another syllable. Sometimes it says "the user," and sometimes it says "a user,"
Huh.
but there's always another syllable there.
That's interesting. I honestly, I think I would have thought they would use the same sample for every.
One would think so.
Yeah.
The DVD copy I'm watching, it says "game over," period, user wins, period.
I think it was just written, and in the first episode, they just went with it. With
Just thought that I just thought that was
again, that's the
interesting that
only
we hear
time-
different things.
Yeah, it's just weird because like at the first episode, that's the only time I ever heard an extra syllable.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be something to look into, though.
It's almost like that. Like, what was that? That Yanni and
Laurel.
Laurel. Like some people
Yeah.
hear Laurel and some people hear Yanni.
It's interesting because it depends on the frequency of which you hear it.
Well, I'm mostly deaf, so maybe that's why I hear "user wins."
Well, it says Laurel wins.
Oh, right, Yanni
yeah.
wins.
But no, I
Yanni wins next episode.
yeah, okay, that's fair.
So to get back
Yanni.
to the point Christopher was making,
The matter at hand. Yes.
yes, the matter at hand. Dot expresses concern. Hey, can they win without Bob.
Oh, the other binomes got trapped in the game.
There's always some that kind of get trapped. They don't want to be in it.
Yeah.
Scary.
Presumably it's just binomes and sprites who just live in whatever district the GameCube lands in at
and
that.
can't get out in time.
Yeah. Or
So,
sector.
it gets sucked back up into the purple sky, and the sky turns blue again with like little clouds.
Yeah.
And this is the first time it shows the viewer. It cuts to. I actually sent Christopher a screenshot. It says "Game over. User wins," or "The user wins," and Bob has a perplexing face. That's not quite horror or disappointment.
Cal, you should post the photo you sent me in the Discord chat.
I will right now, as Christopher explains what his theory of that expression looks like.
So my first reaction was the expression on Bob's face. He looks like a guy whose weed stash just got taken by cops.
Aiden, if you check out,
there it is. Yeah,
that doesn't look like sorrow or like terror to me.
It's no. That's
I love that.
Oh man, my weed.
Oh man.
And it cuts
Bummer.
to the bummer, man. And it's not like he's being arrested. It's just being confiscated.
Giga
Like
bummer.
Giga bummer, wow. And it's so it cuts back after the cube pulls up to the sector where the game had fallen, and there's a hover ambulance with a siren going and spotlights.
Yeah.
And as we look at the sector very cleanly, it looks like it completely deleted, which the term for we learn soon is nullified.
Yeah.
It looks like it completely deleted a cube chunk
Yeah.
of mainframe.
It's perfect little cutout.
Yeah, it's just like scorched and
yeah, it's like a perfect kind of like cutout of it. And there's like smoke coming up from the ground. And Enzo says the whole sector's nullified offline because they lost the game.
And Bob is all like, this never would have happened if I had just done that favor, or done Megabyte's stupid little favor.
This never would have happened if I had cooperated with that mob boss. That's the spirit, Bob. I feel like
that's the lesson to take away from this. It's just allow yourself to be coerced.
Coerced, yeah. Remember, always cooperate with terrorists. Let's not, remember that he stopped you from getting in the game or anything.
Yeah.
So he goes to like face off against Megatron, and again, I think this is good.
Megabyte,
Dang it. Megabyte. This is good because it shows Bob that he's not always confident. He's still young. He's like the new sprite in town, as it mentioned earlier. And without like kind of Dot and the others, maybe his like compassion would get the better of him.
I've always kind of suspected that Mainframe was Bob's first like posting as a full fledged
he's
Guardian.
a rookie. Yeah, that's how I feel. And she's like, wait, go talk to Fong first.
Fong. I love Fong.
And it cuts to the center. It shows, I love these shots of Mainframe, by the way. It's this big circular white and golden orb in the center, and in the distance we see like Jetson buildings and this like cobra looking red tower,
the Silicon Tower,
which is we find out shortly is Megabyte's like layer. The
Silicon Tower.
Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called.
And Christopher, what are they playing?
The core of Mainframe where Fong lives is called the principal office.
Oh, he's in the principal office.
Yeah.
kids can resonate with that.
Christopher,
what are they doing in here?
So he goes to see Fong, and what they do is play Pong.
Yeah.
Yeah, like but 3D, like in person, like tennis Pong.
Which I believe they did in the movie Tron.
Pong with Fong.
Pong with Fong.
From Tron.
Which I remember when the show first came out, and I told my mom about it, and my mom was like, "Oh, is it like a Tron cartoon?" Because I'm like, wow, it's this really cool like 3D cartoon like set inside of a computer, and she's like, "Oh, is it Tron?" And I'm like, I don't know what that is because I'm 9. And it's the
No,
90s. It's not 1980.
cooler.
It's not 1982. Okay.
Mom. So Fong, he has this like this like rippling like cube energy like around his arms and underneath him, and he's a box.
Yeah, and
With little,
these like little like energy boots and gloves that both of them have
yeah,
actually
and I think they have a,
elevate them off of the floor and allow
yeah, they're
them
like
to kind of slide around. It's pretty
they're
cool.
slidey, yeah, and I think they both have a weird chip on their head. It's like kind of like beeping. I'm not sure what that's supposed to do. Maybe sync them up with the hologram that they're interacting with. I'm not
Probably.
quite
Could
sure.
be.
It makes
And
sense.
when the thing that they're hitting around bonks around, it makes this exact same sound effect as Pong.
Yeah, Fong does this little spinny thing. Like he spins around in a circle and like whacks it to it's like playing air hockey against somebody that doesn't know how to play. And it just bounces off the side like the sides like 10 times as it slows down and goes towards Bob. But we zoom in on Fong, and how do I describe his head? Jeez.
It's like
I want to
ET's head almost.
It's kind of
Yeah,
right.
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
With some Morpheus glasses.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
like like angled Morpheus glasses. And he's got like a little Fu Manchu. And his almond shaped eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Fong is kind
he's-
of a weird
He's Asian.
He's an Asian stereotype. I don't think it would go over very well nowadays, to be perfectly honest.
I don't think it, and yes, he has an Asian accent
it's-
we find out.
Not really. Well, maybe in the voice, yeah, but I don't think of the accents there.
Well, he's supposed to seem like sagely and wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, he talks in that like Asian master stereotype kind of way as
Yeah.
like the
yeah, I
like
can hear it now.
like the guy from the Karate Kid, or like even the shop owner in
Mr. Miyagi.
in Gremlins who sells Billy
Oh,
The
yeah.
Mogwai.
the
Oh,
Mogwai. Yeah.
he does. Yeah. And like you said, it's not necessarily racist, but I just don't think it would go over well now.
Which is
No.
really sad because like Fong was like one of my favorite characters.
That's
It's
why
just
I
like-
don't think there's any problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, like he's got the look, definitely that they may revamp if they ever came up with it again. But yeah, maybe the voice. I don't know.
Christopher, his icon is a gold and black icon that's on his like front shelf thing, but it's actually a yin yang.
Shelf thing.
It's a drawer. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
he
right.
pulls
So
out
funny.
the drawer from his like square body, and he takes the chips off of their foreheads and puts it back in the little drawer, and that's when we could see his little icon. And it's actually a yin yang. It's a gold and black yin yang.
Yeah.
It's not like a
Oh yeah, I see it now.
yeah, kind of cool. So yeah, there's some customization to their icons, which I think is cool. And he says, "Oh, you've beaten me, so you have proven yourself worthy of my advice." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay."
You've beaten me at my favorite game. Yeah.
Which that right there too is like very much a like kung fu master trope.
Oh, like you must prove yourself to.
Yeah, to be
for sure.
yeah to be worthy of my assistance. Yeah, it's very much a kung fu master trope.
Yeah.
And he says to him, "Megabyte wants me to do a favor." And then his head, Fong's head, he's quite shorter, and it looks like he rolls around on a ball underneath his
Yeah.
like shelf. He stretches his head out, kind of creepy,
This is neck.
to his neck. Sorry, his skinny little neck, all the way up to Bob. And he says, "The command com has tried to erase him at every upgrade." What? So okay. I think we know what that means. Like, I guess every time there's been an OS upgrade, it's tried to address this lingering virus, but it's a really difficult one. He even says, but he's a very clever virus.
Anytime the user has updated the system software somehow, he's like tried to get rid of his virus problem, but
But the
that
cat came back.
that viral code just keeps persisting, you know?
Yeah, it's a toughie. And then he waves his arm like Iron Man, and a whole bunch of vid windows with like random statistics and like pictures of Megatron and like all of his like goons and like the hover tanks like pop up on these windows, which I
Mhm.
thought was like kind of cool. And he asks Bob, "What's this favor he's asking?" And Bob says he can't say, and he says, "This is my favorite line." Yeah, he's like, "I see. There is an old README file that says you should keep your you should keep your friends close and your enemies
closer.
even closer." And I'm like, a README file, eh? They go full, and he looks at Bob, and Bob goes, "Mega binary idea."
It's known as frenemies.txt.
Yeah.
He's like, "Good idea," and he has this big, huge, shit-eating grin on his face. And he goes, "Bob, I've seen that look on young sprites before. Don't do anything rash." So what does he do? He does something rash.
He does something rash.
Yeah.
And I love when he enters the Silicon Tour and he hits a button. It's supposed to be a doorbell, but then this vid window pops up and it's this door knocker, and it knocks itself. I just love that.
Did you guys notice that the entrance to this like giant, like scary, like tower is again this red crest that looks like his head,
Yeah.
Megabyte's head.
Yeah.
And also the button that he presses to bring up this doorbell vid window that rings itself is the same icon that Megabyte has tattooed on his chest.
Oh.
Yeah, the barrel skull.
Yeah.
And the vid window, we're met with a vid window looking at Bob from an upward angle, and Megabyte is kind of like tapping his fingers, and it says on the screen, database input imminent, and then in a big red letters it says terminate ?
Ha!
And I'm like, is there a cannon pointed at Bob, and he's like lingering his finger over the terminate button?
It's like, no. Yeah.
I will let you
Not
two
this
continue. Not well, as we find out later, he needs Bob. I will let you two continue, and I will disappear for a moment.
Okay. Have fun.
All right. Yeah, take it away, Aiden. Where are we? now?
Sure. He enters Silicon Tour. Wait, where are we now? He's at. Doesn't it cut away?
Yeah, it goes back to the diner.
It goes back to the diner, doesn't it? Yeah.
Where Bob, or not Bob, Enzo and Dot are talking about some shit. I actually don't remember what.
I don't remember either.
I watched this a few days ago. But from there, they say some bullshit, and then we cut back to Bob at the, what did you call it, the Silicon Tour?
The Silicon Tour, yeah, the
Silicon
TOR. I believe Fong got hold of Dot somehow because he was concerned that Bob was going to do something rash, just like they spoke about at the principal office. And they thought, oh no, he says, where's Bob? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, Fong says he's not with you. And he says, and then Dot and Enzo go, no. Well, if he's not with you, then he's with Megabyte. And
yeah, he may be at Megabyte alone. And they're all like,
that's
alone?
Right. Alone? Yeah.
And so, yeah,
then
we're back at
away.
Yeah, so we're back at the Silicon Tour, and Bob is greeted by Megabyte on this elevator platform thing, and Megabyte's like, "Oh, I'm glad you finally came to your senses, Bob." And Bob's like, "Oh, you'll have to forgive me. It's taken a while. I'm not from around here, so it's taken me a while to realize the advantages of having a friend like you."
Yeah.
And Megabyte's
Just
like, "A
kissing up
wise,
to him.
yeah, a
Yeah.
wise." But he's saying it in this way that's like very, like, you can tell he's full of shit. He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not from around here. It's taken me a while to realize the advantages of having a friend like you."
like you. Yeah.
Yeah.
With a smirk on his face, and they start going down.
Yeah, and we land in this. They land in this this big, like, underground facility, and the elevator platform that they were on moves onto this track and goes forward, and we just see Megabyte straight up has like this full, like, massive army on either
Full
side
on
of them.
legion, if you will.
Yes,
Yeah.
legion.
This
if you will.
full on legion of his cronies and his soldiers, and all the tanks are everywhere, and they've all got their weapons trained on this. What we soon find out is a massive tear.
Yeah, there's this at the end of this warehouse that has all of these marching viral Nazis, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's kind of what it reminds me of,
Yeah,
honestly.
that's basically what they are. Yeah.
So there's this big door that opens up, and when it opens, we're revealed to what's revealed is this big, as you called it, a tear, which is this blue, like, kind of shifting, pulsating
Orb.
of energy.
Yeah.
And it's it is held. It is being held in place by this D20 looking thing.
Yeah, kind of like a containment field.
Yeah.
But we soon figure out that Megabyte found that tear, and he needs Bob to make it into a portal.
Yeah, so Bob brings up Glitch, and he gets Glitch to analyze it, and he's like, "Oh, it's a class 12 tear, leads directly to the supercomputer, above average volatility."
Yeah.
And Megabyte's like, "You Guardians certainly know your tears." And Bob's like, "Well, that's the idea." And so now we find out what the favor that Megabyte has been teasing this entire episode is. What he needs is Bob to stabilize the tear for him, because stabilizing the tear will turn it into a portal directly to the supercomputer. And stabilizing tears is something that only Guardians can do.
Yeah.
But Megabyte also mentions that games dropped by users are also able to stabilize tears. But since he's, as he puts it, so much more intimate with Bob than any user, this seems like getting Bob to do it seems like the best way to go.
Exactly.
And Bob's like, "Well, you want to go to the supercomputer?" And he's like, "Yes." And he's like, "Well, what about all of these people?" Like, pointing, kind of gesturing to his massive legion of viral Nazis. And he's like, and Megabyte's like, "Oh, just some colleagues to make my visit, shall say, more comfortable." I like the fact that he's like, "Oh, just some colleagues."
Yeah, that's really all they are.
Oh, it's like just me and some coworkers, we're just
Yeah.
we're just gonna go for a night out on the town in the supercomputer. And Bob's like, me stabilize a tear and create a portal so a virus can go straight to the supercomputer? I don't think so.
Yeah.
He's like, what guarantee do I have that you won't infect the supercomputer and raid the armory? which I don't know what the armory is here in this context, but so Megabyte, one of his cronies, his colleagues, if you will, brings over this case while Bob's back is turned to them. And Megabyte grabs this big, like, gun-looking thing out of it, and he responds to him. He's like, "None, really." And he shoots Bob with it. And
Yeah, that's right.
It's like this.
It's like a harness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bob's like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Take advantage of Mr. Nice Guy." And Megabyte's like, "We're going to Plan B," and he's like, "Wait, what's Plan B?" And Megabyte's like, "Oh, it's quite unpleasant, really." So his plan is this, like, harness gun thing that he has Bob strapped to now. His plan is to shoot him toward the tear. Now, a sprite or a binome going into a tear that hasn't been stabilized will just be deleted completely.
Yeah.
So by doing this, he's basically forcing Bob to stabilize the tear. It's actually kind of a brilliant. It's a good plan, really. It's forcing Bob to stabilize the tear. Because if he's shooting him into it, Bob has two options: stabilize the tear or die.
Yep. That's basically it.
So Bob makes the predictable choice and stabilizes the tear, and
course.
gets shot into it. The tear goes from being this, like, shifting, kind of pulsating series of blue lights moving around. It goes from that, when it's stabilized, it goes from that into just being this, like, reflective sphere.
Yeah.
And we see into the sphere a bunch of floating platforms with these, like, green, like, green and silver cylindrical tubes sticking up.
It's like a
So
network of
network of systems.
the supercomputer.
The supercomputer, which I believe, other than watching the intro, this is our first introduction into what the supercomputer actually is. Because I remember watching the show as a kid, and, like, it was always the supercomputer, the net, the web. Like, these were always really nebulous things.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, like, I didn't understand what they were exactly.
No, I was always wondering what the supercomputer was when I was little. But
Yeah.
because I never saw the sorry, go on.
And so, like, how is like, presumably the user's computer is just, like, you know, some guy who likes to play computer games every now and then, has a computer in his bedroom. What's its relationship to the supercomputer? Like, how is that computer on the same network? Is the user, like, is Mainframe actually located in an office somewhere, and the supercomputer is basically the server that all of these other systems are linked to?
I'm guessing so, because it comes from the net. So we're dealing with post internet.
Well, yeah, and this was the early days of the internet too.
Yeah,
when most people didn't have it in their homes.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was already this enigma that was slowly coming to be.
Yeah, no, I think now that I think about it, I think the user's computer is an office computer at probably a huge office building.
That
Probably
makes sense.
And the nerd playing Ski Free or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's basically just, like, when his boss isn't around, he's, like, putting in his, like, little 3.5-inch floppy of whatever his newest game is instead of actually working. And
That makes sense why the user's so bad at games.
Yeah, it does. And the supercomputer itself is just the company's server. And all of the other systems linked to the supercomputer are other cubicle stations.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. This
So
is something.
we're-
This is something that I never thought of until just now. So we're figuring shit out.
So did you continue the episode, or did you theorize about some stuff?
We did both. We kept going. We're now at the point where Bob has just stabilized the tear after Megabyte tried to shoot him into it.
With his like shotgun tether?
Yeah.
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 You guys continue on from here. I'm going to grab a beer. I will be right back.
Alrighty then.
So
So,
yeah,
yeah.
he just kind of like shot Bob at the said
Hello?
again?
I'm losing you.
Oh, sorry.
You're cutting in and out.
Yeah, 1 second.
Oh, okay.
Huh, I guess I went too far away from my little dongle,
Oh, I see.
which is weird because I was the same distance I always was.
Interesting.
So, what did he say when he like yelled about glitch?
Oh, well, he stabilized the tear as Megabyte was about to shoot him into the tear, kind of forcing Bob to stabilize it and create a portal. So
Yeah.
Megabyte, so he flies through the portal, and then Megabyte yanks him back. And Bob kind of goes, what are you trying to do, erase me? Megabyte goes, if necessary. And
Yeah, so what does he yell at glitch to prevent himself from like being torn apart?
I forget.
Let's see here. Yeah, because he kind of is like, what about these guys? And there's like an army behind him. And he's like, oh, they're colleagues.
Yeah. Help make my stay a little more comfortable.
So he wants to get to the supercomputer and take over.
Basically, yeah.
Also, like, Megabyte is like super strong.
Yeah.
He just picks him up with this like gun like very easily.
Yep.
And manhandles Bob around. I think he yells glitch key, and it kind of wraps the tear and turns it into this mirror-like surface rather than this like staticky one.
Yeah, it stabilizes the tear into a portal.
Yeah, so I guess that's called a key.
I guess so.
And
Yeah,
he-
I honestly
yeah.
forget what he yells or what function.
Yeah, it's he just says
calls
glitch
it.
key,
Oh, okay. Huh.
and then he calls it back. He just says glitch, and it kind of comes back and it turns into a normal tear again.
Oh,
So-
of course.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
I remember
why. Yeah, that's why Megabyte has been. I wouldn't necessarily say playing nice, but has been non-lethal with his persuasion because he technically needs Bob because he's the only one that can stabilize the tear.
Yeah, I had mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, that's why he hasn't. He's been holding back, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Hack and Slash somehow like are like holding Dot, and they're like, "Look who we found trying to sneak in." Yeah, she was starting a riot. And Megabyte goes over to this big computer and he presses some buttons.
I do like how Bob is all like says to Megabyte, he's like, "What are you trying to do? Erase me?" And Megabyte's like, "If necessary."
If necessary. Yeah, he doesn't give it. And I was saying to Aiden, he's just kind of manhandling like Bob with ease with one arm. He's just like dangling off of this like tether.
Oh yeah. Megabyte is this like kind of hulking beast of a creature.
Yes, he is.
Compared to
I really
Bob.
like his pointy xenomorph head. So Megabyte goes over to this like computer terminal, turns something on, and it shows like a camera showing the rioters outside. And I love this. One of them is holding a sign and it says, "Smash the solid state." Another one is holding a sign with that like viral symbol, the skull viral symbol, with like a red X, like Ghostbusters X going through it. And one of them, he's a little derpy-eyed looking. He's holding a sign and it says, "The proletariat want bread."
I'm looking at this now.
I just love the riot is like 3 people with signs.
Yeah.
And it's
Like one's a construction worker,
there's
one's just a dude.
no riot happening at all. Yeah.
I guess that's what they thought were riots back in the 90s.
Or or at least in mainframe.
Yeah. But I really love the like smash the solid state and the
Oh, yeah.
proletariat want bread. I'm like, wow. I don't know. I really like that.
Bread exists in mainframe.
Smash the solid state.
That I find truly funny.
that
although
is funny.
although did solid state drives even exist at this time? Because I don't
Not
think
that
they
I
did.
know. Or if they did, they certainly were in their early stages.
Yeah. Because like even some computers were recording data on film at this time still.
Oh geez.
Yeah, right. Like a lot of servers were still at this time still using tape film.
Oh,
that
that's
is
right.
true
Yeah.
too, yeah.
Sony actually only stopped. I remember reading about this. I think it was 2015 or
Amazing.
2016. They
Wow.
only stopped making server tape like around that time because of how film works. Like you could hold an absurd amount of data, computer data, on these big like giant cassette tapes. They could hold like something insane like 10 terabytes on just this like one cassette tape.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. But they only stopped making them like maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I guess they were still in
Oh,
use
that's
enough.
wow.
Yeah.
Old school.
So there you go.
Yeah.
See, you're learning something, listeners.
I
I think we're all learning things in this episode.
think
Great.
so, yeah.
Yeah. So Bob
You know
is dangling.
who's not learning things though are these protesters.
No. And Bob kind of kicks over this big computer terminal when Megabyte turns his head to tell Hack and Slash to lock Dot up. And apparently that's enough to destabilize the containment of the tear. And it
Yeah,
starts slowly moving around.
The D20 containment field.
Yeah. And he just kind of tosses Bob and he's like, "Stabilize the tear quickly." And it shows a whole bunch of little goons kind of being erased.
Just blowing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's
Just
just
exploding.
exploding.
As the tear kind of just floats over them.
As the tear floats nearby, and then it zooms in on Megabyte's face, and he has this like glare as Dot and Bob are like being whisked away in that like weird platform that earlier they had arrived in.
Yeah, they're the like platform elevator thing.
Yeah.
So Megabyte tries to grab onto the tether that is still connected to Bob.
That's right.
And so Dot helps get Bob out of it.
I
And
like that. She just taps a button on the front.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it comes right off.
And so Megabyte drops back down. But then we look down into the elevator
abyss.
shaft, into the abyss. And then we see Megabyte just scaling up the side of the elevator shaft in a way that actually really reminded me, like that shot reminded me a lot of RoboCop 2. When RoboCop is going up against RoboCane in the like big final battle of that film.
Right.
There is a shot exactly like that.
Huh.
Where the big like hulking RoboCane robot is scaling up in like scaling up. I think it was even an elevator shaft too, but he's scaling up in a very similar fashion. And RoboCop 2 predates this show by like 4 years, so
Could be an homage. This show is full of those.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure it is.
It's for the viewer. He's like bounding like a dog, but like crawling up the side of the elevator shaft like a xenomorph, and there's like an echoing growling, and it's actually quite scary,
Hmm.
in my opinion. And as they reach the top and they turn to get off, he just like stands up, like right in front of them. And this is why I like Megabyte. He's like this dapper kind of like mob boss who wants to do things, like he wants to do things in a certain way that it helps everybody and the least amount of conflict. That's what he claims, right? But he's
Yeah.
also very feral and animalistic.
Hmm.
So
That's
he's like a
true.
refined monster. And I really like that.
He's a monster with some culture, you know.
Yeah. And he lifts his eyebrow like parts up and he goes, "Leaving so soon?" Even though he just like scaled this freaking like elevator shaft like a xenomorph. How rude. And then
Or
Christopher's
like
favorite,
Robocane.
or like Robocane. And then we get a warning, incoming game. Like all of a sudden again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And he
and then
goes,
Megabyte says something along the lines of like, "How fortunate."
yes, he's like, "Well, how convenient."
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So
and
the GameCube drops right onto uh
right over top of his base.
the Silicon Tour. Is
That's
that what
right.
you called it, Aiden? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so the GameCube drops right on top of it, which like that is very convenient. As it has been
it's very
established.
convenient.
Perfectly convenient for Megabyte.
Yeah. As it has been established that in addition to Guardians, GameCubes can stabilize tears.
That is correct. So there's two ways to stabilize a tear.
Uh,
Bob's glitch, and
Or the
a
user.
game.
Yeah.
And this is our first time we get to see a game.
Yeah, I was actually just going to mention that because, like, the last GameCube that dropped, we never got to see what was actually going on inside. This time, though, this is our first introduction to the concept of a game in this show.
That is correct.
And we open in space, and there is this, like, space aircraft carrier
It's a
thing.
space aircraft carrier, yeah, and it has
Yeah.
the number 42 on the front of it.
So for those old enough to remember PC gaming in the early to mid 90s, this game is basically Wing Commander.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we get to see it from their perspective, which is this big 3D world.
Yeah. So we're basically in Wing Commander now.
Why does it have the number 42 in the front? It's the meaning of life?
Maybe? Yeah.
That actually might be an homage, yeah.
Yeah,
Probably,
that's the only thing
yeah.
I could think of. Yeah. And it shows them it shows Bob and Dot standing there near a bunch of ships on the
And they have-
aircraft carrier, and
Yeah,
there's some binomes behind them.
Yeah.
Did you catch that Bob either gives like a thumbs up or a hang loose, like hand gesture to the binomes behind him? Kind of like, your
No.
guardian's here with
No.
you guys. And he kind of leans back and he does like a hang loose, like pinky and thumb gesture.
No, I didn't see
No, I
that.
never saw that.
And they all kind of smile, and then together or one by one, they all say reboot and they tap their icons. And these green cones come over, or sorry, cylinders come over them, and they all change into like space flight suits.
Presumably a recolored version of Bob's shower from the beginning of the episode.
Oh yeah, the little cylinder that pops down over them.
Yeah.
Could totally be, yeah. And then we see a scary red ship come and shoot at the aircraft carrier and blow up some ships.
It's the user.
Yes. And Bob says something along the lines of, "Oh, that's the user, but he's not who I'm worried about. Where's Megabyte?" And as the user pulls around in this red ship, it shows Megabyte just standing there on top of the, presumably one of the cannons of the aircraft carrier. And it cuts to the perspective, the first person perspective of the user's ship, this red ship. And Megabyte just like latches onto the front of it. Like I said, he's scary. Imagine
Mhm.
seeing that in, well, I guess you wouldn't see it in Wing Commander, but in like a video game, you'd be like, oh, you'd like you'd stumble a little bit.
You could
Yeah.
see things like that in video games nowadays,
Yes.
but definitely not at the time. It would just
When
be
I,
like, what?
yeah, what? When I was a kid, I
What?
thought the ship, what? When I was a kid, I thought the ship was colored like Frisket. So I was like, oh, maybe this is Frisket's ship. Because
Oh yeah, that makes
it's
sense.
red and gold, yeah. But it cuts to the user's ship, and there's nobody in the pilot seat.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he just Megabyte is on the front of the ship, and he just kind of digs his claws into his hands into the windshield, and
Yeah.
changes the whole thing like this dark blue, metallic blue, like him, and red. And then he does this weird like thing where he morphs into the ship, but his body like
Yeah, he kind of
reverses.
like molds through it,
A
and then
viral takeover is what they call it, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and
his head
Dot's all
just
like,
180s.
what's he doing? And Bob's like, viral takeover. He's infecting the user.
Yeah,
Bummer.
not good.
This is not good. Now we've got a mega user.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I scoffed, like laughed at that a little bit. He's like, now we got a mega user. And I'm like, oh, okay. What does that mean? Is it like he was hacked and the user all of a sudden is way better? And he's like, whoa, I don't even have to touch the controls. Like you'd think
that
he'd restart the game.
that feels like something that was very much something the writers thought like, oh, maybe this can become a thing later on in the show, and they just
It
completely
sounds
abandoned it.
cool. Yeah,
'Cause
he's like,
they're
it's like
they're-
Megabyte and a user. It's a mega user.
yeah. But then they're like, no, this is actually dumb. So we're just not going to address that ever again.
And they're like, look out, he's coming he's coming back around. No, he's not. He'll head for the tear. It's a class 12. So has he mentioned what class the tear is before,
He had,
gentlemen?
yeah.
What is a class 12? Is it a specific type or is it the size of the tear?
I'm a little fuzzy on that.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I think it's got to be the size.
I'm thinking it's the size. It's big enough to fly a ship into
Yeah.
and march an army into, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this episode hasn't actually elaborated on what a class 12 means
I didn't
beyond
think so.
beyond Bob saying that it leads directly to the supercomputer. So I assume it being a class 12 just means, yeah, it's probably the size and like the strength of it.
The strength.
I know in future episodes.
Well, we're not
they
going to
do
talk
go
about the
into it,
future
yeah.
episodes, right?
Okay, fair. Yeah.
But we learned that there are different tears, and this one's a class 12, and this one goes to the supercomputer. And it's bad to let Megabyte reach it.
The tears are kind of storm-ish looking.
Yeah, like
they kind of look.
static-y.
Yeah, they kind of look like almost like energy storms in a way. So if you think of like, say, like a category 5 tornado, for instance, is like the biggest and strongest tornado you can possibly have. Like maybe like classes of tears kind of operate in a similar manner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe they operate in a similar manner. Class 12 being
I
really
don't know.
big.
I'm just speculating.
Maybe certain classes are more stable or less stable than others. Maybe they lead to other places. We'll find out.
Possibly. I wonder if even the writers themselves thought of this.
Honestly, at this point, no. we're overthinking this.
Yeah.
We're probably thinking about this more than the than the writers. But to get back to the game, all of the two sprites, Bob and Dot, and the binomes, they all get in ships, and they fly off into space in pursuit of Megabyte. And I'm sure there's some Star Wars references going on here that I.
There are some references here. There are 2 references. Aiden, did you pick up on them?
I got at least one about Star Wars. I think someone yelled "Copy Wing Leader," and it was very, very A New Hope-esque.
Yeah.
So Bob says Alpha Wing clear of deck. Proceed heading 1138,
Hmm.
which is kind of related to Star Wars in a way because of George Lucas's film that he did, I think before Star Wars, called THX 1138,
Hmm.
Oh,
which is actually what the THX sound thing is named after.
Oh,
oh, crazy. Okay.
curious.
So remember,
That's a
like,
hell of a reference.
remember back in the 90s when you would watch a VHS tape and you would get that thing
Yeah, exactly.
at the beginning before the movie. It would have this logo that said THX.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wondered if that's what it was, but I wasn't quite sure.
And then Bob says a line that
Oh, is it the Aliens reference?
it is, yeah, stay frosty.
I
Yeah.
even like young me, I got that because I had loved the Alien series, the franchise. I mean,
I had never actually seen any of the Alien movies until I was a teenager. So
that's fair. Less traumatized that way.
weirdly enough, though, I watched the Predator movies a lot when I was a little kid.
Oh, me too. Alien and more Predator actually with
Yeah,
Arnold
yeah,
Schwarzenegger.
yeah.
Yeah,
Weirdly enough, I
more
really
that one.
liked Predator 2 when I was a child.
We watched, my cousins and siblings and I watched both of those, and they were different. Like I think Arnold is a better like 80s hero than who was it? Donald Glover?
No, Danny Glover.
Or Donald Glover?
Donald Glover.
Danny Glover. Those are two very different people, by the way.
They are, yeah.
Not only in age, but in different spheres of talent.
Yes.
And Danny Glover, I liked him though because he's just kind of like, the I'm 2 years away from retirement kind of like cop that just wants to like.
Although, if they decide to reboot Lethal Weapon, they'll probably cast Donald Glover as Murtaugh.
Yeah, yeah, I could kind of see that.
Yeah, it would probably be Robert Pattinson as Riggs and Donald Glover
Yeah,
as Murtaugh.
I can get behind that.
Actually, yeah, now that I say it out loud, I would watch that movie.
Right. All right. So this is a Donald Glover podcast.
I don't know, Aiden, did you watch Aliens or Predator as a kid?
Oh, geez. Alien, yeah. Predator, yes. I did. I liked them both. It has been a while for me though.
Mm.
So I didn't. So any references I would have gotten, like, well, other than Stay Frosty, yeah, I would have gotten them, but not. Yeah, it has been a while.
Mm.
I
Well-
really like the Stay Frosty reference. But speaking of like Stay Frosty, I guess Megabyte leads the squadron that's now chasing him into a meteor belt, a meteor storm,
Asteroid belt.
asteroid belt or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's very weird. I know video games and movies and stuff like to depict asteroid rings or belts as being very dense, but child me was very interested in space. And even like young me, I was like, the dispersion of asteroids would not be that dense, I assure you. Like there's suddenly like nothing, open space, and then just this wall of like densely packed
There is
meteors,
there is a shot in this sequence
asteroids.
of Reboot Squadron. What do we call them?
Yeah,
Yeah, the Reboot Squadron dodging a asteroid and like zipping around one by like all in formation, with one another.
pulling sweet stunts
That is straight
and
like
loop-de-loops.
that is straight up a shot from Star Wars.
Yep, it even reminds me of a level in Star Fox.
I'm
There's
pretty
always a level where you're like flying through.
no, I'm pretty sure like this exact shot is an homage to something from Star Wars,
Oh, it probably is. There's a
like
lot of
camera
Star Wars going
angle
on
and
here.
everything.
Yeah. And what happens? Oh, some of them are like exploding and being just flat out destroyed. Now, we don't know this until the end of the episode, but like when you're destroyed, like what happens? If you're just watching this for the first time, like, are you dead? Can you die in the games? Right? Like that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And some of them behind him like hit the asteroids and just explode. And he has this kind of like little like scanner thing on one of his monitors, and it says beep boop boop boop, and then shows some of the binomes getting destroyed.
Can you imagine the just utter disappointment of like going into a game, but like and being like, "Oh hey, there's a guardian here. We'll be fine," and then just dying anyway.
But from like not enemies or anything, you just smash into an asteroid.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guardian here. Woo, we'll be okay, and then you die. But we find out at the end of this episode that if the user doesn't win, and so like the guardian or the sprites or if Mainframe wins, essentially, nobody dies. Everybody survives.
Hmm.
Which, like I said, at this point it's very scary. But like, oh, okay, so you're just kind of like in what's it called? You're just observing the game in the ether while you watch the rest of your buddies like attempt to beat the game.
It's like when you get killed in Unreal Tournament. And then you can just like
You could follow.
you
the
could just
different
like
players.
you could just chase cam like various different players.
Maybe he purposely smashed into that so he could just follow Bob.
He's like, "Yeah, I'm just setting this one out, guys."
Yeah, I barely know what I'm doing. We lost Alpha 4, and then this is the first time it showed it. Bob catches himself unawares, and there's a giant asteroid in front of him, and he hits a button, and a purple laser like burns this big like tunnel right through the asteroid. And he smugly says, "That was easy enough." And Dot kind
Yeah.
of does her stereotypical like half smirk and like head shake. And apparently, because remember when we entered the game, it fell over the I can't remember what his base is called. Megabyte's base?
Silicon Tour.
Silicon Tour. So as he's flying, there's another like kind of ship, like giant like aircraft carrier type thing or a warship or something. And it's colored like he is. And he says over the intercom, "Erase those meddlers following me." So presumably all of his kind of like minions, they rebooted as well, and they're in control of this other like warship in space. It's got like tons of missiles and like cannons and stuff on it. So I found that was kind of interesting. You could just bring a legion of followers in with you.
Well, I mean, remember the GameCube dropped right onto the Silicon Tour, so all of Megabyte's legionnaires, if you will,
That's right.
they were just there. So, I mean, in the game, like, of course, they're still going to be legionnaires and follow him,
Which is kind of cool. And then there's kind of another Star Wars mini scene where they fly around and get blasted by the ship. And I really like the animation for
and then
all
they
of
fly
them.
down, and then they fly down to Hoth.
Yep, they blow up the ship with ease. They just like fly over it and shoot it a few times, and it just blows up, and they fly down to Hoth.
Flying through that tunnel.
Yeah, they kind of go through an ice tunnel,
Yeah.
and there's only like what 3 people following Bob and Dot at this point.
Yeah, I think so. Most of them are all gone.
Exactly 3. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
And Bob's going to take him out with like a lock on, but I guess Megabyte blows up some like charge or something like that behind him, and the tunnel starts to collapse, and it it takes out everyone except Bob and Dot. So they fly into this big like ice chamber, and their maneuvers here literally remind me of Star Fox because of how basic they are. Like Megabyte does like a barrel roll and
Oh, yeah.
comes up behind Bob, and he's like, "Time to shut you down, Bob." And Dot's
Bob
like, "He's on your tail."
Bob shoots a missile at Megabyte's ship because he's like tailing behind him. He shoots a missile at Megabyte's ship
Yeah.
and blows it up, but like it doesn't even explode. It just gets vaporized. And then
just
there's
kind of- yeah.
and there's Megabyte just like floating just suspended in the air, and he flies back and lands on Bob's ship. And
this is scary because Bob blows him up and he's like, "Too cool." And Megabyte just lands on his ship and pulls the windshield thing back.
Yeah. Pulls the windshield thing back, and he says, what did he say to Bob?
We could have been great
That's
if you
it.
had worked together.
yeah, join me in the supercomputer. And Bob's all like, "I'd rather be erased." And Megabyte's like, "Your choice." And then he extends his claws out and kind of falls off the ship, but cuts off one of the wings in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that before he because he's like, "You don't have to fight me, Bob. Think about it." Like he's still trying to team up with him at this point, and he's like, "I'd rather be erased." Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so Bob crashes. Megabyte lands on the ground in front of the tear, which has now been stabilized as a portal by
Dot
the
crashes
game.
too.
Yeah, the wing that came off Bob's ship hits Dot's ship. Dot explodes. And Dot kind of goes flying through the air, and Megabyte catches her by accident.
Yeah,
so
we don't see what happens to her because Megabyte lands, and as he's doing like this speech,
his speech is like, "You had your chance to join me, Bob, but now I will
infect the supercomputer,
and return to crash mainframe."
Yeah, and return to crash mainframe. And then Dot, out of nowhere, as he's pounding his chest and he has his arms up in the air.
He's got like his arms up in the air in like a comical like supervillain pose.
Yeah, and then Dot just happens to land. She's kind of looking curvy in this shot, by the way. She's wearing like white and gold heels, and just saying, it's a good angle.
You know why? I was mentioning earlier about ABC and censorship. The reason why Dot has a uniboob is because ABC complained that she was too sexual of a character.
Well, it's interesting. I never thought she had a uniboob. I think that's just how like a tight shirt goes over one's chest, right?
Yeah,
like it doesn't outline each individual part of her chest.
Pretending it's 1994, I'm not going to say anything else, but her design may change.
It's interesting in the shot that is at like about the 4-minute mark. Megabyte's like holding her, and it outlines her butt, which is oddly shapely, and she's like, "Just thought I'd drop in." Like, what else do you say? He can like rip you in half, right? And I love his like reaction. He just like tosses her to the side or drops her or something. He just goes, "Oh," and like throws her on the ground.
Yeah, he just like lets her down. He just like drops her with this like frustrated shrug.
Yeah. Even though he accidentally just like supervillain saved her. And Bob goes he says glitch a zip line.
Yeah.
And a zip line appears because he was attached to the ceiling with like an anchor, and he flies across this ice chamber. Again, Megabyte, I understand that you're a classic villain and you need to give a speech, but you could have beaten Bob
twice
to the portal.
Yeah.
So Bob flies into it, and this is curious. I was going to ask you, Christopher, how come the game ends as soon as Bob flies into the
I was
stabilized tear?
literally just thinking that.
You too?
Yeah. So the tear, apparently, this portal has somehow become the ultimate objective of Wing Commander. But
Right.
like, why? So
The
like,
game immediately ends.
yeah, and it's like game over. But like, so what was the goal of the game? What would the goal of the game be if this tear wasn't a thing?
Here's kind of what I think. Again, we are thinking about this way more than the writers did. Okay. Because the user was a mega user, he was infected. The game at that point was won by Mainframe. Right? The user was stopped. But the game only continued because there was a virus in the game trying to reach that tear.
That's funny. I was just gonna say that.
And because Bob beat him there and presumably did something to destabilize the tear after he had entered, there was nothing holding like the game in this like stasis, and then the game just ends. That's again, we are thinking about this more than anyone has or ever will think about. But yeah, I just think it's because they had already won, and the only thing that was like keeping the game open was this like portal, the stabilized tear. And since
Makes sense.
Bob beat him to it, he could close it from the other side, which is the supercomputer, and then the game would just end.
But what would happen if there was no guardian in the game, though? Would
I
the
guess
would the user just be like stuck, like unable to end this game for all
unable
eternity?
to like control alt delete the game.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? He goes down to hard, reset the computer, and like that's not even working. He like rips the power
He's like
plug out,
frantically trying to get out of the game before his boss shows up.
and he's like ripping the power out of like the tower of his computer, and that's not even working. He's like, oh man, not again.
And his boss just shows up and leans over his cubicle with a coffee cup, and he's just like, yeah. But I told you to stop playing those games on the job there, bud.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get you to close that game down for me there, buddy. Okay. And then he's just like, nope, not gonna do it. But to get back into Mainframe, immediately the purple cube, boom, disappears into the sky, and we're met with Megabyte looking at the unstable tear, and there's like you said, Christopher, it's kind of like a storm. It's crackling. There's like beams of light coming out of it. It kind of looks dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking to nobody here, maybe to Dot, and Megabyte is like, you want to see how much I hate to lose? And there's only Dot there, and he like extends his like talons, his fingernail talons. He's done that a couple times, yes, claws.
Yeah.
And then the tear from behind
Tendrils,
Dot,
if you will.
the tear behind Dot, it once again becomes like a mirror like portal showing the supercomputer, and a golden like sparkly door appears, much like the key he used earlier to make the circular door. And Bob just walks through and he goes, I'm back. And then his glitch
It definitely had a golden key look to it, or a golden ticket look to it.
The golden, yes, it does. It's all foily, and then glitch kind of like goes up and envelopes the portal, and it just disappears. Much to Megabyte's chagrin, yes.
Chagrin.
Yeah. And we're learning how to pronounce things here too. And Megabyte ain't pleased, and he's like, what happened to the tear? And Bob is like, just a little thing I picked up while I was in the supercomputer, like these two. And they're like golden snitches, like golden balls hovering in front of him and Dot. And he's like, what are they? You'll see, or maybe you won't. And they like shoot like little gold raindrops over Bob and Dot, and they disappear.
So they seemingly teleport by way of ball glitter.
And then Megabyte comes to the logical conclusion, it must have been a return command. They've got back to the diner, and he runs off. And then you hear, we don't see anything. You hear Bob's voice, the camera tilts to where they were, and Bob goes, hidden file commands. You gotta love them. So they didn't teleport. He just turned them invisible. Yep.
Hidden file.
Now, interesting, even though it had only been like 10 seconds, it seems like Bob had spent more time in the supercomputer than that. And remember how we were talking about how time moves differently?
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like he'd have to have spent more than the 10, 15 seconds.
Higher clock speed.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it seems like he spent like, I don't know, minutes or an hour or something there, like getting these hidden file command.
Because it's not like he was flustered when he came back. Oh, sorry I took so long. You know, he just kind of showed up and as if no time had passed at all.
Yeah, and the show, but he has this stuff.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
exactly.
kind of intriguing.
Yeah.
What do you think, Christopher? You think there was some time shenanigans?
I think time probably moves the way the characters perceive it in the supercomputer. I'm sure time probably moves more slowly, but it's actually that time moves even faster.
Yes.
Kind of like the like the visual cue of, like, say, when you're watching The Flash run at super speed in Justice League, like when we see things from his perspective, everything looks like slow motion, but it's actually
not moving.
But it's actually because he's moving so quickly. I think that's probably how time probably works in the supercomputer as well.
That's what I was thinking.
Because the supercomputer would be way more powerful than this random users like office cubicle PC.
Which hasn't been updated in like 10 years either.
Yeah.
And that explains also why, like Aiden was saying earlier, it's the speed, right? Like the supercomputer's faster. And to what you two were talking about, it's the server, right? He goes to the server directly to the source. And so he could have spent, like, in his perception, an hour like shopping around. And because he said the supercomputer has an impressive armory of gadgets. So
and that's never, I mentioned that earlier because that's never really elaborated on.
No, but that's a good mystery. Like, I don't want to be shown the supercomputer, not yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. Again, I think Megabyte holds back too much because it cuts to Enzo in the diner talking to Bob and Dot, and he's explaining to them, once Megabyte's goons were convinced that you and Bob weren't at the diner, Megabyte and his Kludge boys split. So they didn't mess the place up. They just were like, oh, I guess they're not here, and they left. What is Kludge boys? Kludge.
I have no earthly idea.
Kludge, an ill-assorted collection of parts assembled to fulfill a particular purpose.
Oh, I guess that's really accurate.
That's a very interesting word. I'm going to use.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow, I'm amazed at how well they introduce all of this new vocabulary on the show.
No kidding. And
or
so
how
many,
they
so many of it
reuse
goes,
computer. Yeah.
So many of it goes right over your head too. You have to go back and watch everything again.
Like we are doing and dissecting
exactly
the episode.
And it even went over my head rewatching it for this podcast. So
I was watching it and I'm like, Kludge boys. Because again, I'm watching the DVD with the subtitles, and I'm like, it's Kludge like hyphen boys, and I'm like, Kludge boys. What? Good to know. And Dot turns to.
It sounds like it could be the name of like a a British punk band from like the 80s.
Megabyte and the Kludge Boys.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Is that our band?
I think
Megabyte
it
and the
is.
Kludge Boys.
I think it is
Oh,
now.
that's good.
I need to remember that. I'm actually writing that down on my phone. And yeah, it ends with them chilling in the diner. Looks like it's kind of all cleaned up. And Dot says, you know, Bob, Megabyte will never forgive you for this. As if he was a good person anyway.
Scene, I'm actually impressed at the depth of field effect that's going on. So if you look in the background, everything is actually quite blurry.
Yeah.
I
wondered if that was a depth of field or if like the windows are frosty.
No, I think it's depth of field.
Cool. I think they pulled that off really well.
Which is kind of impressive for, 1994.
Yes. And I'm just noticing now Enzo has a yo-yo attached to his belt.
Yes, he does.
Now, a cool thing that 90s kids like is skateboarding and rollerblading. So I appreciate the use of elbow and knee pads in the show.
Yeah. Safety
Enzo
first.
has like yellow and black knee pads and elbow pads and like shoulder pads.
Yeah.
And I think Bob has just knee pads.
And shoulder pads.
Oh yeah, kind of like weird strappy, like
he's got like some weird chest armor too. Torso's exposed. Yeah.
The fleshy, gooey bits, the weak spot is exposed.
It's like a gladiator.
A little.
Yeah.
So
he's
Bob
got knee pads too, doesn't he?
So Bob is Russell Crowe, is what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. Cocky Australian guy.
His name is Maximus.
Yeah, okay.
And it kind of, they're like, oh, so what was it like in the supercomputer? And he says, oh, it was like pleasant. It was nice to visit, but it sure is good to be home.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, it's got more RAM, higher capacity.
This is kind of like, oh, it's so much better than this place, but I love it here.
This place sucks, but I mean, I'm stationed here, so.
Yeah.
This place sucks, but you guys are kind of cool, so.
You guys are cool. And I think the episode ends with Cecil like freaking out again.
I do not get paid enough for this.
Cleanup is not my function. And then it shows like the diner like letters like all fall apart and
everything's just crumbling. Yeah.
Yeah, the roof
caves in.
The roof caves in.
Yeah.
And then like the sign that was holding up all of the letters just falls back in this very like comical fashion.
Poor Dot's diner.
All the cheesy sound effects that come along with it. It's great.
Yeah, very cartoony, like bling blong.
Like
plunk.
they like see
very like, Nickelodeon.
Very. Yeah.
That's episode 1.
That's episode 1, boys and girls.
So that was season 1, episode 1, The Tearing of ReBoot. Is there anything Aiden, is there anything more you would like to say about this episode?
I think this was a great start. It was a really good pilot, I think, to the whole series, because you get to meet everybody and you get to see everybody, maybe except for a few characters that get introduced later. But I just think it's a very good all-around storytelling of exactly who's who and what their function is, and how everyone's brilliant and yet everyone's flawed at the same time. And it's just kind of, if I'm going to get really, really deep about it, I just think it's not just fantastical, it's very human as well.
Real quick, I will say, Cal, your thoughts on the episode?
My thoughts on the episode? It's a treat. I really enjoy it. It's a good opener. Like, it's impossible to see that as a pitch or a trailer and not want to watch the rest of it.
Yeah, it's a good introduction to the world. Yeah, I don't think I have anything really more to say about it. So Yeah, we got to get out of here. Thanks very much to everyone who has listened to this. Please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We will be back next week with the second episode of ReBoot, Racing the Clock. And until then, I've been one of your hosts, Christopher Siege.
I am one of your other hosts, Cal.
And I am the third host, Aiden.
And until next week, game over.
Stay frosty.
ReBoot.
ReBoot will return after these messages.